Have you ever had one of those moments where you're standing in the kitchen, washing the same dishes you washed yesterday, and suddenly it hits you? You're surrounded by all the evidence of a shared life: his coffee mug on the counter, her jacket hanging by the door. But you've never felt more alone. It's not the physical absence that hurts, it's the emotional distance that grows like invisible walls between you, even when you're sitting side by side on the couch. You catch yourself staring at your partner's profile while they scroll through their phone, wondering when you became background noise in your own marriage. The fights aren't really about who forgot to take out the trash or missed another school event. They're desperate attempts to be seen, to be important again, to hear, "I choose you," in a way that isn't just routine. That heavy feeling in your chest when you go to bed facing opposite walls? That's grief for the connection you thought would always be there. If you've ever swallowed your needs because it's not that big a deal, or cried in the shower where no one can hear you, keep watching. Because what we don't talk about enough is how loneliness can grow in the very place we expected to feel most loved. You know how to play the part so well. At family gatherings, you're the picture-perfect couple, his hand resting lightly on your lower back as you both laugh at Uncle Joe's terrible jokes. On social media, you tag each other in those nostalgic memes about marriage, adding heart emojis that make your friends swoon. But later, when the bedroom door closes and the lights go out, the silence between you feels heavier than the darkness. You lie there listening to their steady breathing, wondering when you became strangers who happened to share a bed. You miss the way they used to ask, "How was your day?" and actually wait for the answer. Now, when you tentatively share a worry or a dream, you see their eyes glaze over before you finish speaking, their mind already elsewhere. The cruelest part? When you gather the courage to say, "I feel lonely," they dismiss it with an exasperated sigh or a patronizing, "You're too sensitive." So you learn to swallow your words, to make yourself smaller, until one day you realize you've disappeared completely. Not because they asked you to, but because it hurt less than constantly trying to be seen. That hollow ache in your chest isn't just loneliness. It's mourning. You're grieving the person you used to be with them. The one who felt cherished, understood, like coming home. Now you're just furniture in your own marriage, polished and present but utterly invisible. You used to remind him about date night every Wednesday, circling it on the calendar with hopeful pink highlighter. You'd gently nudge her phone face down during dinner, smiling through the sharp little pang when she'd pick it up again after 2 minutes. But somewhere along the way, you stopped. Not because the longing for connection faded, but because each ignored request, each half-hearted promise chipped away at something vital inside you. Now when you step over his discarded socks for the third day in a row, your jaw clenches without you even realizing. When she says, "I'll do the dishes later," as you're elbow deep in soapy water again, your shoulders tense just slightly, a reaction so small no one would notice unless they were really looking. And that's the tragedy. No one is looking. The resentment doesn't come in screaming fights or dramatic confrontations. It seeps in through microscopic cracks. The way your hands move just a little rougher when folding his laundry. How your "good morning" sounds flatter each day. The way you've started buying only your favorite coffee creamer instead of the kind you both used to share. You tell yourself it's easier this way, that keeping score is petty, that love means accepting imperfections. But late at night, when you stare at the ceiling counting all the things you've stopped asking for, you can feel the weight of those unspoken disappointments settling into your bones like lead. The cruelest part? You know if you voiced this ache, you'd be called unreasonable. So you swallow another complaint, another need, another piece of your heart, and wonder how much more you can dissolve before there's nothing left of you at all. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from being the rememberer in a relationship. It's in the way your fingers automatically dial his coffee order. 2 sugars, extra shot, while he's still rubbing sleep from his eyes. It's the calendar alert for his mother's birthday that pops up on your phone, the one you set years ago because you knew he'd forget. You're the one who notices the way your daughter's toes press against the ends of her sneakers, who catches the last slice of bread going stale in the pantry. These acts of love have become so automatic, so expected, that no one even sees them as gifts anymore. But here's what keeps you awake at night. When was the last time he noticed the way you wince when your back aches after a long day? When did she last surprise you with your favorite snack just because? You tell yourself it's petty to want recognition for things you'd do anyway, but that's not really what hurts. The pain comes from realizing you've become the invisible scaffolding holding up your shared life. Essential, but unseen. Love isn't about tit for tat, but there's a special loneliness in being the only one who remembers to buy more toothpaste, the only one who knows when the car needs an oil change. It's in the way you find yourself staring at his relaxed face while you're already mentally planning the grocery list, wondering if he'd ever think to pick up your favorite yogurt without being asked. The terrifying question that whispers in your quiet moments. If you stopped doing all these invisible things, would he notice you were struggling? Or just complain that his shirts weren't ironed? That's the difference between being loved for who you are and being valued for what you provide. And your heart knows which one feels like home. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from being the emotional air traffic controller of your family's life. It's in the way you automatically remember that your daughter has a science project due the same day your husband has his dentist appointment, while somehow also being the one to soothe your son's playground heartbreak. You're the keeper of birthdays and anniversaries, the mediator during family squabbles, the one who stays up late worrying about whether you packed enough snacks for tomorrow's field trip. These invisible tasks pile up like silent weights on your shoulders, each one light on its own, but crushing in their endless accumulation. The irony cuts deepest when you finally voice your overwhelm, only to be met with blank stares and helpless shrugs. Just tell me how to help, they say, not realizing that having to constantly direct them is its own form of emotional labor. You long for the day when someone notices the milk is running low without being told, when your partner anticipates a stressful day and offers to handle dinner without waiting for your desperate plea. The worst part isn't even the workload. It's the growing realization that no one sees all these quiet acts of love as labor at all. They've become as expected as sunrise, as invisible as air, until you find yourself crying in the cereal aisle because you're so tired of being the only one who remembers which brand your son will actually eat. That's the cruelest joke of emotional labor. By doing it so well, you've made yourself disappear in plain sight. There's a particular kind of heartbreak that comes from folding a mountain of laundry at midnight. His work shirts, the kids' tiny socks, towels no one ever remembers to hang up. And realizing no one will notice unless you forget to do it. You don't need flowers or grand gestures, just a hand on your shoulder when you're elbow deep in dishwater. I saw you stayed up late finishing the presentation. That must have been hard, whispered as you crawl into bed. But the silence grows heavier each day. You start to wonder if they'd notice if you stopped entirely, or if your acts of care have become as invisible as the dust you wipe from the shelves. The cruelest part isn't the lack of praise. It's the way your love has been reduced to a checklist of functions. Cook, clean, listen, fix. You catch yourself staring at your reflection in the microwave door, wondering when you became a ghost in your own home. And the more your efforts go unacknowledged, the more desperately you try. Maybe if the house is spotless, maybe if you never complain. Maybe then you'll be seen. But the hunger only grows. You find yourself choking back tears when a coworker says, "You're amazing at this," because it's the first time in months anyone has acknowledged you as a person, not just a pair of hands that keeps life running smoothly. Love shouldn't be a performance where you're both the actor and the audience. It should be the quiet understanding that you're cherished not for what you do, but because you exist. And when that's missing, that's when you start to disappear. There's a quiet tragedy in how you've learned to trim your needs down to bite-sized pieces, afraid they'll be too messy to handle. You swallow the words, "hold me," because last time you asked, he sighed like it was an inconvenience. You delete 3 drafts of a text about feeling lonely, settling instead for a heart emoji. Safer, smaller, less likely to rock the boat. You've become an expert at folding your sadness into smaller and smaller shapes, tucking it away like laundry that never gets put down properly. The worst part? You've started believing it yourself. That wanting regular date nights is demanding, that needing reassurance is clingy, that crying when you're hurt is dramatic. You ration your requests like they're limited resources, terrified that if you ask for too much, you'll be met with eye rolls, or worse, silence. So you starve instead. You tell yourself you're being low maintenance, but really you're just teaching yourself how to survive on crumbs. Here's what no one tells you. Love isn't supposed to make you feel guilty for needing. The right person doesn't make you apologize for your hunger. They ask why you ever felt you had to. If you're constantly shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comfort, that's not compromise. It's slow suffocation. Your heart isn't asking for too much. It's just asking to be met, fully and without apology. For once. There comes a moment, often in the quietest hour of the night, when the house is still and the weight of your thoughts feels heaviest. When you realize, this isn't just a rough patch. This is the shape your marriage has taken. The distance between you isn't an accident. It's the result of 1,000 small choices. 1,000 times you've both looked away instead of toward each other. You can't fix it alone. No amount of extra effort, no perfectly cooked meals or swallowed complaints will make someone choose to see you if they've grown comfortable not looking. But here's what you can do. You can stop waiting for permission to want more. You can stop pretending the bare minimum is enough. Love isn't just staying, it's showing up. It's in the way they pause the TV when you start speaking. Not because you asked, but because what you say matters. It's in the coffee they make you without being reminded how you take it. The way they notice you're tired before you say it aloud. You deserve that. Not as a reward for good behavior, not as a prize for being patient, but simply because you exist. The most painful truth? You already know whether this is a season or the story of your marriage. That ache in your chest when you imagine another year like this. That's your answer. Some silences can be mended. Others only grow louder. Whatever you choose next, to stay and fight for change or to leave and fight for yourself, do it with your eyes wide open. Not because you're afraid to be alone, but because you're finally brave enough to demand more than crumbs. You were never meant to live like this. And deep down, in the part of you that still remembers how to hope, you've always known. If today's discussion touched something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep these honest conversations going. And if you have a story of your own, or need advice on something you're carrying in silence, drop it in the comments. I read every word, and who knows, your story might become the next video that helps someone feel a little less alone. This is Marriage Matters, and your voice matters here.